Sorry, I didn't have a New Year's noisemaker, but I had a kazoo that a former intern left on my desk. Nowadays, if you celebrate New Year's, you probably go to a party where you drink and you dance and you share a kiss with somebody at midnight. Or maybe you just lurk among the shadows wishing you were never there. So, where did this all come from? And how did our traditions change surrounding this very kind of odd holiday if you think about it? It's in the middle of winter, it's cold, it's dark, and there's a giant ball dropping on TV. It's a little weird if you think about it. Just a note, when we're discussing New Year's Eve traditions in this video, we will be talking about primarily New Year's as it was celebrated in Western Europe, which then eventually bled into American culture. There's a lot of really cool New Year's and New Year's Eve traditions from around the world that we will not have the time to get into. So just a quick note, this is from a very American and particularly a Birmingham perspective. Our very first written records of New Year's as a holiday comes from 4,000 years ago in ancient Babylon. This holiday took place over 11 days and took place at the beginning of spring, which coincided with the very first plantings of that season, which makes sense from an agricultural perspective. And so the earliest celebrations of New Year's that you see across a lot of times in a lot of cultures coincided with whenever that first planting season was, which again makes a little bit more sense than the middle of winter. So why do we celebrate it in January when it's cold and dark and wet outside? Well, we can thank Julius Caesar for that. That's right, the Romans are responsible for a lot of weird things that we still do to this day. And in 46 BCE, Julius Caesar revised the calendar and actually kind of corrected a few little oddities that had existed in the system. And so one of those was adding new months to the year. And one of those was named January after the god Janus, who was the god of doorways, archways, new beginnings, all of that sort of fun stuff. He's often depicted with two faces, one facing the future, one facing the past. Sometimes you'll even see in the iconography that one of the faces is clean shaven and the other has a beard. And this holiday, this new beginning of Janus's month, was celebrated with things like gift giving, which was still a major tradition surrounding New Year's up until about the Victorian era in the West. New Year's was actually a bigger gift-giving holiday than Christmas was. And it was also celebrated with drinking and, a lot of fun debauchery. In the Middle Ages in Europe, we do see New Year's kind of move around a little bit. Some religious officials wanted to put it on a day of more theological significance. So sometimes you'll see folks celebrating New Year's on Christmas Day or on the Feast of the Annunciation. But in 1582, Pope Gregory the 13th, yes, the 13th, there have been many Gregorys. Gregory the 13th moved it back to January 1st, and that's pretty much where it stayed this entire time. In 1870 in the United States, it was one of the first 4 federally recognized holidays in the country, alongside Christmas Day, Independence Day, and Thanksgiving. So what about those resolutions? We all make them, we all have trouble keeping them. Where did this tradition come from? And again, back 4,000 years ago, it seems like the Babylonians undertook this time at their New Year's celebration to make promises to the gods on how they would improve the next year. And this tradition kind of passed down, it's a new year, it's a new beginning. Why not be a better person? And so in the 1890s, in the Birmingham Eccentric, in actually 1899, In January, it was noted that, quote, "This is the swearing off season, when the good resolution man throws away his pipe and tobacco, and a few days later goes off hunting for them in the yard. This time too, when the swearing off man says he is not going to touch a drop for a year, and shortly after drops into a saloon just to see a man, and upon emerging is seen diligently wiping dewdrops off his whiskers." So, just as today, it seems in 1899, the two most popular resolutions were to stop smoking and to drink less. In the 1930s, a survey was done. It was found that about 25% of American adults made resolutions for the new year. Today, it's around 40%. And in December of 1899, there was a poem in the Birmingham Eccentric called New Year's Resolutions. People in the past were just as creative as we are today when it comes to naming things. And it goes, quote, make them, even though you break them. Good resolves are comforters, aye, even for a day. Strive a little longer, it'll make you stronger. And perfection never was found in human clay. Make a firm resistance and pray to have assistance. Give the demon that you dread a tussle, and you can. Push the foe behind you and begin a new year, better woman, better man. And that line about praying for assistance, watch night parties were very, very popular back then, as they still are in many churches today. And this was a time when members of the congregation, and particularly young people, would have an alternative to the partying of the day, where you could go to church, have fun with your friends, and not drink and be raucous, but also pray for inspiration for the future, atone for maybe past sins that you had, and again, make resolutions to be even better in the coming new year. If you lived in Birmingham during the latter 1800s and early 1900s, you might have received postcards in the mail like this. As Leslie states in an earlier video that we did just on holiday postcards, this was the golden age of postcards. Printing had become cheap and plentiful, and people just could not get enough of these fun holiday designs that all you had to do was put a short message on the back. Not even that, if you were just sending greetings for a new year, like that's pretty obvious what message you want to convey there, and throw a stamp on it. In fact, during this time, on a lot of postcards in our collection, houses weren't even really numbered yet. You just have the person's name, Birmingham, Michigan, and that was that. Because at this time, Birmingham was still a village. We didn't become a city until 1933, and so the population was on the smaller side. If watching the ball drop in New York is a treasured part of your New Year's celebrations, you are definitely not alone. This tradition started in 1907 after some previous mishaps with fireworks caused issues, because as all Americans know, there is no holiday that we will not celebrate by blowing things up. And this tradition has continued on every year since then, except for the years of 1942 and 1943 during World War II, when the city underwent some dim outs for the war effort to conserve both energy, and also because there was a fear that too much light in the city would potentially make it a target. A lot of us in 2020 looking forward to our own holiday traditions that are going to look very, very different this year, can empathize with the people that lived in 1942 and 1943, and in fact during all of World War II, because at that time a lot of their holiday traditions had to be curtailed, and it looked really different back then as well. And besides the ball drop in New York City, most churches would also be in the tradition of ringing their bells at midnight, and families as well would have their own bells that they would ring at midnight. And before clocks could really be synchronized, in the 1800s, a lot of times you were hand winding your clocks And they weren't automatically set for you off of, satellites and stuff like they are today. So that lent kind of a very chaotic air to midnight at New Year's Eve. If you can imagine, you have bells going off, in one part of the city, and then 5 minutes later you have more bells going off. You have your neighbors shooting off fireworks in between. And so like for maybe a half an hour, it's just chaos. And it sounds like a good time, I'm not gonna lie. And so what about that staple of so many romantic comedies, that kiss with your loved one at midnight on New Year's? How did that start? That's a little muddy. We're not 100% sure how that tradition started. Definitely during the New Year, in a lot of cultures, a lot of traditions, you do see this belief that you should start the new year as you wish to continue it, which means that everyone in your family better have pockets full of money. You clean out your fireplace and your chimney. You make sure all your laundry is done and folded on that day, because you don't want any chores left undone, because that would bring about bad luck for the next year. That would mean that you would just be a slob with your laundry. So you wanted to get everything done for that day. And also, New Year's Day was a pretty important day in the 1800s if you were a single person. New Year's Day was, for most people, a holiday that they took off, and that meant that there was a lot of social events and social calls. And if you were a single person looking for that very special someone, this was a great day to get to know them better. And there was also a tradition of you wanted the first person that you saw on New Year's Day to be someone that you liked, someone that you maybe loved. You didn't want to meet your frenemy the first day of the new year. That would be starting off on a totally wrong foot. And so all these traditions kind of merge together to give us this New Year's kiss that we currently have. And some of us like, and some of us are like, whatever, that's weird. And so while our New Year's celebrations might look super different this year in 2020, we here at the Birmingham Museum want to wish all of our friends and all of our followers the best, happiest, most prosperous New Year ever. So here's looking at 2021. Thank you so much, and we'll see you in the new year. Bye.